been almost 40 years since NC State has won a conference title, and after starting 4-0 in ACC play for their best conference start ever, the Wolfpack head out of conference to keep the momentum going as they ride a 6-game win streak into South Bend on Saturday, followed by a huge home game next week against defending national champion Clemson. We'll find out just how NC State is getting it done as we go one-on-one with Joe Giglio, Sportswriter for NC State football, at the News and Observer on the OFN Meeting Room with Greg DePalma. It's October 26, 2017. I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning into the OFN Meeting Room as we talk NC State football with Joe Giglio. And Joe, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Greg. Appreciate your time.
You got it. Appreciate your time. So, Joe, big games coming up for NC State football. As long as you've been covering the team, is this the most exciting next couple of weeks that in the build-up that you can remember?
It has the potential to be. In 2002, which was Phillip Rivers' junior season, they started 9-0.
Okay.
And had gotten up to 13 in the country and actually lost to a fairly ordinary Georgia Tech team at home, which kind of, it was more of that NC State was playing, not who they were playing. With these two games, obviously, it's Notre Dame, who's ranked in the top 10, first at their place, and then the game in Raleigh against Clemson, which, they're the national champions, but also a team that NC State nearly beat last year at their place. So
yep.
Just kind of thick with many storylines.
Yeah, and I'm not sure a lot of fans do know. I mean, this is, as you said, this is Phillip Rivers' alma mater. This is where Russell Wilson played ball, Mike Glennon, and most recently Jacoby Brissett. So there's some NFL quarterbacks that have played here at NC State over the years. You take a look at this particular quarterback, Ryan Finley, may not be an NFL quarterback. I don't know. You tell me what you think about what he's going to be doing or what he needs to do to even get at that level. But what he does do is he hold on. He's a very, very accurate passer. And he has been just about perfect this year. 11 touchdowns, no interceptions. What has he really done to help out this program since coming over, transferring over the last couple of years?
Well, there's my alarm for my thing. Sorry.
That's okay. I didn't even hear it.
Okay. I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, it's okay.
Finley,
talk about Ryan Finley. Because, I mean, how big was it also for Ryan Finley to come over and for him to have Drinkwitz come over with him? I mean, that's pretty important.
Yeah, if you go back a half a step, they lost Jacoby Brissett after the 2015 season. And they had a younger kid in the program who they had hoped would be ready. And in the spring, they weren't crazy about how well he was picking up the new offense by Eli Drinkwitz. He was hired from Boise State. And so Ryan Finley had graduated from Boise, and he had also been hurt during the 2015 season. And during that time, Brett Rippon stepped in for Boise and led them to 10 wins and had a really good freshman year. So there was really no room at Boise anymore for Ryan Finley.
Okay.
Well, so his offensive coordinator goes to NC State. He graduates from Boise, ends up getting to NC State, winning the job. And, last year, I like to say that Ryan was good last year. He was rarely great.
Mm-hmm.
He was good. And I thought coming into this year, just by the mere fact that he has been here longer, more time to work with his receivers, more time to work with the players on offense, familiarize himself. And also, you got to keep in mind, he'd been hurt so often at Boise that he hadn't started a complete season since his senior year in high school.
Wow.
So, the improvement that we're seeing from Ryan, I think, has a lot to do with not only that experience, but some continuity and some health. And one of the things he's done really well this year is he gets the ball out of his hands. He hasn't been sacked in an ACC game. And he makes good decisions. And he's taken more shots downfield this year.
Okay.
Last year, I say he was good, not great, because I felt like he just took what the defense gave him. There were a lot of dump offs, a lot of check downs, not a lot of plays down the field. This year with Calvin Harmon and Stephen Lewis at receiver, you see a lot more chances downfield, and that's a credit to Ryan for being willing to do that and not just take the easy play.
And he's got some weapons. I mean, especially in that backfield, you got the Speedy Hines, and you also, of course, have Jalen Samuels. And Jalen is Dan Shonka's top-rated. Now, he has him listed as a fullback, his top-rated fullback coming out in the NFL senior. But who knows what kind of role he's going to play at the next level. But wow, I mean, is he the team offensive MVP? I mean, 7 rushing touchdowns, 54 receptions. I mean, this guy can do it all.
It's funny. As good as everybody calls him J-Sam, as good as Jay has been, I actually think Finley's been an MVP because of that ability to take more chances. Because, last year NC State had a good team, and J-Sam made a lot of plays, and they've been using him more this year. But it really is this idea of using more of the field, taking more chances. And, one thing I'm relatively known for is I chart all of the different places that J-Sam plays and all the different spots on the field that he lines up.
Okay.
And the interesting part about him was he was only on the field earlier in his career like 50% of the snaps. And now this year it's over 80%.
Wow.
And that's a big difference.
Yeah.
Even if you're only using him as a decoy, that's a big difference for NC State. And obviously his production, you mentioned the touchdowns, and he leads the team with 54 catches. He's an excellent player. But just being on the field more has really helped NC State's offense.
Now, on defense, of course, that's the big story, too, for this team. And you take a look at these players, and our lads has, Chubb, of course, is the big boy, top-rated senior defensive end. That's Chubb. Arledge has Street as the number 7 defensive end, senior defensive end. Jones is the number 7 defensive tackle. Hill is the number 10 senior defensive tackle. That's the defensive line. I mean, and then that does not even include Roseboro, who's a junior. So
I was going to say, they have 5 guys who are going to be in the NFL on their defensive front. And it's helped them because they don't have a great secondary. They rank, I believe it's 113 this week in pass defense. So, but they're number 6 against the run, which to segue here to the Fighting Irish, it gets them. It's a strength on strength game.
That's right.
And it'll be interesting to see which side kind of has the upper hand.
Yeah, 6th ranked, 6th overall rushing defense in college football versus 6th overall rushing offense. And then Fernandez, the senior middle linebacker, takes full advantage of all those big boys up front, leading the team in tackles with 56. And what do you think also about how Huxtable, the defensive coordinator, has been able to get these guys to elevate their game? Because most of these guys aren't like top rated players coming out of high school. A few of them, were pretty good players coming out, but I mean, he's done an incredible job.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because both Bradley Chubb and Jalen Samuels were, 2 and 3 star guys that not many other schools even wanted. And they've developed into the best player on each side of the ball for them. And on defense with Huxtable, what they've done is a lot of these guys, you mentioned all those defensive linemen are seniors. A lot of them played as freshmen and sophomores. Both Jones and B.J. Hill played as freshmen. And they took their lumps. Jared Fernandez, you also mentioned, that linebacker. They really took their lumps earlier in their careers. And I believe they have 8 senior starters on defense. So, it's just a group that's matured together and honestly has lost some tough games together. Last year they were 7-6 with a loss on a 33-yard field goal at Clemson that they missed, and a loss at home to Florida State where they dropped the game-winning interception in the end zone. And the very next play, Florida State scored the game-winning touchdown. So they had some really tough losses last year. And as a group, they've really come together and learned from those losses. And they've all put in a lot of work to get to the point where they are right now.
Now, what do you think is? I mean, this is always tough to play the non-conference game before the conference game. You see it a lot. Like I remember last year, just thinking about it with say, I remember Navy playing their championship game and then playing Army, and it's like, well, what's more important?
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm looking at here. Is as big as this. I mean, it's Notre Dame we're talking about. It's at Notre Dame with all the momentum and the start, and but then there's next week there's Clemson. So if you had to think about it, do you think that there is a little bit of yeah, but I think Clemson game is a little bit more important. I know the kids, it's very tough when they're kids to kind of get up 100% for both games. You just can't. A little part of you is going to be a little bit more up for the other game. So if you had to think about which game got a mildly more important, would it be the Clemson game?
Well, you mentioned that they hadn't won a conference title in almost 40 years. So I think if you ask all the players if they had to pick, if they could only, pick one game, if the vital parts of their anatomy was on the line, I think they would all say the Clemson game.
Yeah.
But here's the thing about NC State, and that is they were off last week.
True.
And I think that helps. They've won their last 4 games after a bye. They've been really good in these situations. I think Notre Dame, on the other hand, played their rival last week.
Yeah.
So it's almost like I think NC State's in a very good position. The team I could see having a letdown is Notre Dame. Whereas NC State, if you take care of this week, I'll put it this way to you. If the games had been in reverse order, I'd be 1,000% with you.
Okay.
Because that Clemson game last year really scarred these kids.
All right.
I mean, really scarred these kids. So, in my opinion, they could lose by 100 to Notre Dame and still be. Yeah, that Clemson game has been circled since they got on the bus, since the kid missed the 33-yard kick last year.
Will that hurt them though this week? Do you think?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Because I think of the week off.
Got it.
And the chance to kind of catch their breath. And, and maybe if the Notre Dame game was right after Pitt, and there was a little bit more condensed, I think it really helped them that. And they even, they had that little extra time before Pitt too, because that Louisville game was on a Thursday night. So the spacing on the schedule, they couldn't be any happier with it.
Yeah.
One of the things NC State has said to the league is, okay, we're in a division with Florida State and Clemson and Louisville, but you got to stop scheduling back-to-back games for us against Clemson and Louisville and Florida State.
Okay.
Because remember, last year they lose at Clemson, very difficult game, and then they barely bothered to show up at Louisville the next week.
Sure.
And that was one of the things when the schedule came out this year that they were very happy about, that they didn't have any back-to-back situations with those 3 powerful teams in the division.
Now, again, you've seen enough of this team play, and you've seen the ACC enough. How good can this team, if you really think about it and their chances, what do you give them as far as not only the ACC, but overall? Because, look, if they do beat Notre Dame, then they go into the Clemson game knowing that after that, not that they're going to be thinking this way, but we will, that you got Boston College, Wake, and North Carolina. And now Boston College, okay, they're maybe tough. It's a road game, and Wake's good defense, maybe tough. But again, it's Boston College, Wake Forest, and North Carolina. So even though they may be tough, they're not going to be the Notre Dames or the Clemson. So people will really start to think about, well, wait a second. Clemson went to the playoffs last year with 1 loss. So why not North Carolina State, especially if you wind up beating Notre Dame and have a couple other nice wins on the schedule, and if you can win the ACC championship, can you imagine that being a reality for this program?
I think they'll have to get a little bit of help, and what I mean by that is, I think maybe it can't be 2 SEC teams in the mix. Alabama's not going to lose, but Georgia might lose. So if Georgia ended up with 2 losses, I think a 1-loss NC State would go ahead of Georgia. Of course, that South Carolina comparison is not going to go well for NC State when they get to the end of if they get to the point you suggest.
Sure.
But I think name brand recognition would hurt them at that point, even if they beat Notre Dame, and then that presumably they would have to beat Miami in the ACC championship game. And I hate to say it, and it's not because it's NC State. It's because that's how college football works.
Oh.
If you're a name brand,
yep,
you get more of a, even if at 12-1, which they would be, you get more credit as a name brand. And then the problem would be, by that point too, Florida State's what, 3-4 right now,
yeah,
and Louisville's 5-3 or 5-2.
Sure.
And so they're not really gangbusters. So you would really need Notre Dame to not lose again and be 10-2. You'd need Miami to be 12-0, to have the resume, to go in over an Oklahoma. I don't think the Pac-12 will be an issue. But like I said, if you have two SEC teams and you had Oklahoma, well, that'd be three. Oh, the Big Ten.
Big Ten.
The Big Ten champion.
Yeah.
So that would be hard for them. Like there's not a scenario where I see them getting, if they're 12-1 and Ohio State's 12-1, there's not a scenario I see where NC State would be in over Ohio State just because of the name brand quality of the Ohio State program.
Well, look, it hurt Penn State last year. I mean, come on, how raw.
Well, they didn't have the same record though.
That's true. That's true.
So.
But it just does show you. Because I don't think there's any question if the roles were reversed, the name on the jerseys were reversed last year, that Ohio State would have easily been in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Then the conference championship would have been valued, and the head-to-head results.
And then the committee would have said, "Oh well, it's conference champion. We hold that very important." And then of course when it didn't meet their criteria last year, oh, that's not as important as you might think. So yeah, I get you. But hey, hopefully that's a problem, right? Hopefully this is something that
they would love to be in that conversation.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned 1979 being their last year for the ACC championship. I mean, all those things, and one of the things I'll end up writing next week is that, and if they do beat Notre Dame, this is really as good as it gets for NC State.
Yeah.
Great winning streak. You're in the top 10. People are talking about you. You have some really good players in the national spotlight, some guys who are going to end up in the NFL draft next year, and just enjoy it. Don't worry about if you're in, you're out, this or that. Just do your best, enjoy the moment, because it's game days here next week for Clemson. That would be a great moment for the school and the program and everything they've tried to build up, and that would be something to see, because here in North Carolina and here in Raleigh, NC State, it takes a back seat to Duke and North Carolina, obviously, in basketball and in popularity in general. And, well, you know what I mean, nationally, not necessarily the people in North Carolina. But and those schools have won national championships in basketball and have had a lot to celebrate. And, really since 1983, NC State hasn't had much to hang its hat on. So to be in a position where the school could kind of thump out its chest just at its neighbors, I think would make most of the people around here fairly content.
What kind of we've seen programs that didn't have an identity rise before. So is there a chance with Dave Doran as the head coach that they could really build something here?
It's interesting because this year is the one he's been building to. So Samuels as the senior, Chubb as the senior, all those
guys are seniors, yeah.
Yeah, even Finley, has another year of eligibility, but he could end up deciding his draft stock is such that he has to go next spring. So it's interesting, how will they sustain it? Because they could also lose Naheem Hines in the NFL draft. So
how's recruiting for next year?
Well, and that's the thing. Could you get a bump from this?
True.
And then, realistically, when you're NC State or really any team in the ACC, this is not to degrade NC State. When you're not Clemson or Florida State, okay, you should hope every fourth or fifth year you can have a year like this.
Sure.
Where you have a veteran team, you put a team out there that you feel good about, that you can beat anybody in the league. Maybe you catch Florida State or Clemson in a year they're down and you can win the league. it's not realistic to think that they're going to win 9, 10, 11 games every year, though. And next year, you could already kind of see in the tea leaves, it might be back to that 6. Hey, let's just try to get into a bowl and win 6, 7 games next season. So we'll have to see how Dave Doran can kind of use this season to build on recruiting and kind of maybe rebuild the thing back up or get the thing cranked back up in another 2, 3 years where they're back in a situation like this.
Who's the best player? Let's throw Chubb out of the equation. Who's the best? Who's the second best defensive line? Who do you think should be the second best defensive line prospect?
It's probably Roseboro. He's another guy with Hines and Finley, where if all three of those guys come back next year, I think they could win another 8 or 9 games. Now those guys could decide, kind of like Mr. Trubisky last year, hey, our stock's never going to be better.
Yeah.
And we just had a great year, and I got to cash in. But Darian Roseboro's a really good player. Has had to play through a lot. His dad was sick the entire time he's been at NC State. He passed away 2 weeks ago after the Louisville game. His dad was only 43 years old.
Wow.
I mean, it's just a sad situation. But the kid has played through it all, and he had a very good game against Pittsburgh, actually. And I think he's the kind of guy who could really finish with a flourish here, and that would be a big boost because obviously Chubb has been excellent.
Sure.
I mean, there's no way around it. Last year, I thought Christian Wilkins was the best defensive player in the ACC, and I don't think there's any doubt that Chubb has been in the ACC this year. It'll be interesting to see Clemson in person next week. They also have Dexter Lawrence, kid from Wake Forest here, right outside of Raleigh. So I think that'll be a great matchup. So I'm taking my own advice here. I'm looking forward to Notre Dame, and then I'm looking forward to Clemson, and I just want to enjoy these games and these moments because they don't like. Hey,
that's right.
We mentioned Philip Rivers' junior year. That was 2002.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't happen very often, and NC State put themselves in a position to enjoy themselves. So.
Well, do you like Doran? I mean, what's every time you're building a program, some fans are going to be you're going to have critical and others that are on the bandwagon. So, what was the critical part about Dave Doran as he was growing as a head coach with the program? And do you think he is definitely the long-term answer here? This is a guy that can definitely be here for a long time and a guy that should be here for a long time, or is it too early to tell?
Well, I think Debbie Yow made a tough choice last year. They were 5-6, and she actually considered firing him if the Carolina game last year didn't go the right way.
Wow.
And they ended up winning that game 28-14 or 28-21 and went on to really impress people against Vanderbilt in the bowl game, the bowl win. And, it felt like they had a little bit of momentum going. And then, of course, they stumble in the opener to South Carolina. And there was more questions after that game. Like, hey, man, what is up with this guy? Because, like I said, when you're building towards year 5, this should be your best team.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's answered a lot of questions. And the way that he has developed players and put himself in a position to take advantage of not guys that people, Naheem Hines was a guy a lot of people wanted, so was Darian Roseboro. But a lot of these guys that they have were kind of overlooked in the recruiting process.
Okay.
That bodes well for his future. He's working on a contract extension that'll probably get done later in November, which I would suspect will add. He already has 3 years left on his deal. My guess is it'll add another 2 to it and give him a raise. So. He's in a position in this is his 5th year where I'd be surprised if he wasn't here for 10 years. I would be.
Okay. A couple more things before I let you go. Samuels, what do you think? Kind of a pro he's going to. Where is he going to fit in at the next level? How would you fit him in if you drafted him? What would you want him to do for your offense in the NFL?
I actually think Jay is a slot receiver. That's what he is.
Okay.
He's got to work on his route running a little bit, but he is a guy who knows what to do when he gets the football, knows how to make the first guy miss, which is very important at the NFL level. And as has great patience. He's not a blazing speed kind of guy, but you can notice when he runs the ball, he's got a little Le'Veon Bell in him. He's got some patience and some understanding of allowing the play to develop. And I think you mentioned that he was listed at fullback somewhere.
Yeah.
He is a pretty good blocker. I will, a lot of times you don't think of these new hybrid tight end or even a slot guy as a good blocker, but he actually is a respectable blocker. So I think that will help him too. He told me he had a draft grade of 4th and 5th round if he had come out last year. And, Ryan Switzer was a guy from Carolina, a slot receiver who ended up going in the 4th round. I could see him going 3rd, 4th round and a team. Because, again, he's not going to wow people at the combine. He'll run a 4.5, a 4.6, and he's 5'10", or he's 5'11". We're like the same size.
All right.
So, and like I said, you got to work on a little bit of that route running, but he's got great hands, and like I said, he knows how to score touchdowns. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. Well, look, I mean, it's these guys don't grow on trees, and NFL, boy, they'd love to get their hands on players that can exploit the opposition and matchups and all that stuff. So I think he'll get drafted maybe a good round or higher, more people than that they might suspect, just because of that. Some GM's going to fall in love with him, or some offensive player or offensive coach, and he's going to talk his GM into drafting him. So especially if he winds up making some big plays down the stretch, a lot of big games to go. So what does your gut tell you about these next 2 weeks, which will really impact the rest of the season? How do you think it's going to go?
I think they're going to beat Notre Dame. I do.
I got a good feeling too.
Yeah, I think that's a good matchup for them. And then I don't think they're going to beat Clemson. I think
it's asking too much.
Yeah, I actually think Clemson. It'll be interesting to see. I'm Clemson obviously coming off a loss, coming off a bye. I suspect Clemson will breathe fire against Georgia Tech. Now, if Clemson kind of sleepwalks through that Georgia Tech game and doesn't look like the team. Now, remember last year with Clemson, they weren't great
in the regular season
until they lost to Pitt.
Yeah, that's true.
And then they came out and were like, oh, okay, now we got to get for real.
Yeah.
And I'm very interested to see if Clemson comes out after that loss to Syracuse and does the same thing, which I suspect will probably happen. But defensively for NC State against Clemson's front, that's a tough road to hoe. That's a very difficult matchup for them. For all the same reasons I like them against Notre Dame, I kind of have to say I would be surprised if they beat Clemson.
Well, they got to keep Kelly Bryant healthy, that's for sure. And then, next week's game, though, I mean, the best defensive line prospects in one game in all of college football for both teams.
Well, Alabama might argue with you on that one, but
true.
There's two of them. I mean, Lawrence and Chubb and Wilkins,
Farrell, Bryan, and 5 on NC State. I mean, that's 9. I mean, that's a lot.
I know. It'll be. I think that'll be really fun, and I hope that ESPN ends up sending their game day crew down to Raleigh. It hasn't been here since 2004, so I think that would be another one of those. Hey, let's just kind of enjoy it and have one of those nights where it doesn't happen all the time, so you just gotta embrace it and enjoy it.
Yeah, it might take the win, of course, against Notre Dame.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think
but if they win,
the key.
If they win, they can't not go. If they win, I mean that would be I don't know why they wouldn't. Let's hope it happens. It's great for college football. Notre Dame's had their time, so North Carolina State can use it. And I'll be rooting for him. So, Joe, I appreciate it. Look forward to, if they keep on winning, I definitely look forward to checking back with you and seeing how the season goes. It's still a long way to go. So I appreciate it, and we'll look forward to talking to you again sometime soon.
Yeah, absolutely, Greg. Anytime you need me.
Excellent. Thank you.
Take care.
All right. That's Joe Giglio joining us here. And really love these situations in college football, so that's why we like having the interviews. We love these teams. Go Wolfpack against Notre Dame. And look, we had Notre Dame, remember last week on the show, on our college football show, which, by the way, will be tomorrow, where we take a look at all the big games in college football on OFN College Football Preview. And I've already given you a little sneak peek. I like North Carolina State. I really do. I think it's a good matchup. And, hey, you know me, I like the upsets. Okay, so don't forget to check out the Our Lads 2018 NFL Draft Preview brochure. It's available right now. So you can check that out at ourlads.com. Also, where the best college football depth charts are in the business. And our on-demand interviews with Tommy Birch, Des Moines Register, talking Iowa State football, and Anthony Gimino, all sports, Tucson.com writer, talking Arizona Wildcats football on demand at ourlads.com from yesterday. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN. We'll see you next time on the Our Lads Football Radio Network.